Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. I never thought my life would unravel like this. My name is Jason Carter, and for 20 years, I believed I had a solid marriage, a partnership built on love, trust, and time. But trust is a dangerous thing when given to the wrong person. It started with small things, late nights at work, unanswered texts, the way Lisa stopped looking at me like she used to. I told myself I was imagining it, until the day I sent my drone into the sky and caught her in his arms. That was the moment everything changed. And this is the story of how I took my life back. I never thought betrayal could cut this deep. For 20 years, I had built a life with Lisa, my wife, my best friend, my partner in everything. We had seen each other through struggles, laughed until we cried, and weathered storms that should have broken us. But standing here now, gripping the remote control in my trembling hands, I realized I had been a fool. The drone hovered silently above the lake, its camera locked onto the scene below. The sun was beginning its slow descent, casting golden streaks across the water. Boats bobbed lazily in the gentle current, and laughter carried over the breeze. It would have been beautiful, peaceful, even, if not for the sickening betrayal playing out before my eyes. There, on a sleek white yacht, was Lisa. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders as she leaned back against Paul Sutton, her boss. He was a powerful man in the real estate world, charming, wealthy, the kind of guy who always got what he wanted. And right now, what he wanted was my wife. Lisa tilted her head back, laughing at something he whispered in her ear. His hand slid over her bare thigh, fingers gripping her skin possessively. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. For months, I had ignored the signs. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden coldness between us. I told myself it was stress, that work was demanding, that all marriages go through rough patches. But deep down, I had known. I just didn't want to believe it. I adjusted the camera angle, zooming in. My heart pounded like a war drum in my chest, each beat louder than the last. Then, she kissed him. Not a friendly peck. Not a polite brush of lips. No, this was deep, slow, the kind of kiss a woman gives to a man she desires. The kind of kiss she hadn't given me in months. The yacht wasn't empty. There were others, 2 more men I didn't recognize and Lisa's so-called best friend, Jessica. Jessica, who had supposedly invited Lisa to her father's house for a quiet weekend by the pool. Jessica, who had covered for her. The betrayal wasn't just Lisa's. It was a web of deception, spun tight around me, choking the breath from my lungs. My grip on the remote tightened. The drone hovered at a safe distance, its quiet motors keeping it unseen. I should have felt rage, burning, unfiltered fury. But all I felt was cold, numb. A voice crackled through my earpiece, breaking the trance. Battery at 15%. Return to home. I hesitated. If I flew closer, they might notice. If I lost the drone, I'd lose the footage. No, not yet. I steadied my breathing and pressed the record button. Lisa stood, stretching her arms above her head. Paul's hand slid up her waist, pulling her back against him. She didn't resist. She welcomed it. A nauseating realization settled over me. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't guilt-ridden regret. This was routine. The wind shifted, rustling the trees around me. I crouched lower behind a rock, my eyes locked on the laptop screen, as if looking away would somehow make it unreal. A part of me wanted to storm down there, confront them, drag Paul off that boat, and show Lisa exactly what it felt like to be humiliated. But I didn't. I was a cop, a professional. I knew how to be patient, how to gather evidence, how to strike when the time was right. And that time would come. For now, I needed to get out of here. I tapped the return command on my screen, and the drone obeyed, banking left and beginning its slow journey back toward me. I watched as Lisa poured another drink, tilting the glass to Paul's lips. She whispered something in his ear, and he laughed. The sound of it reached me seconds later. I clenched my jaw, shoving my laptop into my bag. The drone beeped as it landed smoothly beside me. I picked it up with careful hands, treating it like the lifeline it had just become. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was war. I took one last look at the lake, my vision tunneling on that yacht, on the woman I had vowed to love until death. Lisa had made her choice. Now it was my turn. I turned on my heel, my footsteps crunching against the dry leaves. The wind carried the sound of her laughter toward me one last time, but I didn't stop. I had a lawyer to call, and Lisa had no idea what was coming. I drove home in silence. The hum of the tires against the road should have been soothing, but the noise barely registered. My mind replayed the footage over and over, each frame burning deeper into my memory. Lisa's laughter, her body pressed against Paul's, the way she kissed him without hesitation. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. The house looked the same as always, warm porch lights glowing, curtains drawn just enough to hide the world inside. A picture-perfect home. A goddamn illusion. I stepped inside. The smell of dinner still lingered, though the kitchen was empty. Dishes sat in the sink, the table cleared but not wiped down. Lisa's keys were on the counter, her purse slung over the back of a chair. She was home. I found her in the living room, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up when I entered. "Hey," she said casually, sipping her drink. "Hey," I echoed, my voice unnaturally steady. She didn't notice. Lisa had perfected the art of ignoring me. I walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a beer. Twisting off the cap, I took a long swig, letting the bitterness settle. I needed to play this right. If I confronted her now, she'd deny everything. Twist the story. Gaslight me until I questioned what I saw with my own damn eyes. "No, not yet. How was your day?" I asked as I leaned against the counter, watching her. She sighed, setting her phone down. "Exhausting. Work is a mess. Paul is demanding as ever, and Jessica is driving me crazy with her drama. I swear, I don't know why I put up with her sometimes." "Paul, Jessica." Their names tasted like poison. "Yeah," I replied, forcing indifference. "I thought you liked working with Paul." Her expression didn't change. "He's fine. Just stressful." "Liar." "And Jessica? Weren't you supposed to go to her dad's place this weekend?" For the first time, Lisa hesitated. Just for a second. But I caught it. "Oh, yeah, we did." She picked up her phone again, tapping at the screen as if the conversation bored her. "Pool, wine, the usual. Nothing exciting. Nothing exciting." I took another sip of my beer, swallowing the bitter truth. She was so comfortable lying to my face. So goddamn confident. "You seemed really tired when you left." I pushed. "Guess the weekend helped." She murmured, her attention still on her phone. The coldness between us was suffocating. But the worst part? This wasn't new. I thought back to the last few months. The way she brushed me off when I tried to touch her. The late nights at the office. The distant look in her eyes whenever I spoke. How the hell did I let it get this bad? I set my beer down, forcing myself to stay calm. "I was thinking," I said, keeping my tone light. "Maybe we should take a weekend for ourselves. Just us. Get away for a bit. We haven't done that in a while." Lisa let out a small laugh, cold and dismissive. "Jason, we barely have time as it is. I can't just drop everything and go on a vacation." "It doesn't have to be a vacation. Just a day. Maybe drive up to the mountains, get some fresh air." "The mountains?" she scoffed. "That's not really my thing anymore." Once upon a time, Lisa had loved the mountains. We used to go every fall, rent a cabin, drink coffee on the porch while the leaves turned gold around us. She used to say it made her feel alive. Now, she couldn't even fake interest. "All right," I said, standing up. "Guess I'll have to go alone." She didn't respond. Didn't look up. I walked past her, heading upstairs. Every step felt heavier than the last. Our bedroom door was slightly ajar, the soft glow of her bedside lamp spilling into the hallway. I pushed it open, stepping inside. Everything looked the same. Our neatly made bed, the framed wedding photo on the dresser, the faint scent of her perfume still lingering in the air. But it wasn't the same. Not anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, running a hand through my hair. I thought about what came next. How I would play my hand. Lisa had no idea that I knew. That was my advantage. Reaching for my phone, I opened my messages. I typed out a text to my lawyer, "Ted, I need to see you first thing tomorrow. It's urgent." I hesitated before hitting send. This was it. No turning back. I glanced at the framed wedding photo, our younger selves frozen in time, smiling at a future that no longer existed. With a deep breath, I sent the message and turned off the light. Lisa might have thought she was in control, but the game had just changed. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wasn't coming. Lisa had climbed in beside me an hour ago, but we might as well have been miles apart. She lay on her side, facing away, wrapped in the sheets, as if creating a barrier between us. I used to think she liked falling asleep in my arms. Now, I couldn't remember the last time she had. The room was dark except for the soft glow of her phone screen. She was texting someone. I turned my head slightly, just enough to catch the faint reflection in the mirror across the room. She was smiling. That tight knot in my stomach twisted again. I forced myself to stay still, to keep my breathing even. I couldn't let her know I was watching. After a few minutes, she put the phone down and exhaled deeply, a satisfied sigh, the kind she used to make after we'd spent the night tangled together, whispering in the dark. Now, it was for someone else. I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to grab her phone and see for myself. But I didn't need to. I already knew. I turned over onto my back and reached for my own phone. My thumb hovered over the Life 360 app, the tracking app Lisa had insisted we install over a year ago. "So, I know where you are when you're on duty," she had said sweetly. "In case something happens." That was the excuse. In reality, it had never been about my safety. I tapped the app, expecting to see Lisa's location like always. Instead, 3 words glowed on the screen. Location paused. My breath hitched. She had turned it off. For over a year, she'd kept track of me while I was at work, but now, when I needed to know where she was, she had made sure I couldn't. I set the phone down slowly, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I needed proof. I had the drone footage, sure, but I needed something more. Something undeniable. Lisa stirred beside me, letting out a soft sigh before settling again. I turned my head slightly, watching the slow rise and fall of her back. I remembered a time when I used to reach out in the middle of the night, run my fingers along her spine, and she would press herself against me, murmuring my name. That was a long time ago. I let my eyes drift shut, knowing sleep wouldn't come. But I needed to rest. Tomorrow, I would start gathering the rest of the evidence I needed. And Lisa had no idea. Morning came too soon. Lisa was already up when I opened my eyes, standing in front of the dresser, wrapped in a towel. Her damp hair dripped water onto the floor as she searched for something to wear. "You're up early," I said, my voice rough with exhaustion. "Yeah," she said without turning around. "Busy day. Working late again." A pause. Just for a second. "Maybe," she said casually, pulling on a blouse. "I'll let you know." Bullshit. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, rubbing my hands over my face. "I was thinking," I said, keeping my tone light. "Maybe we could grab dinner tonight. Just us." Lisa sighed, adjusting her sleeves in the mirror. "Jason, I told you, work is crazy right now. I can't just take off whenever I want." "It's one dinner," I said, forcing a smile. "Come on. We haven't done anything together in months." She turned to me, arms crossed. "We live together. Isn't that enough?" I stared at her. "Is that what you think marriage is?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't start." My fingers curled into fists at my sides. "You're not even trying anymore, are you?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Lisa grabbed her purse, ignoring me. "I have to go. I'll see you later." And just like that, she was gone. I spent most of the morning waiting, watching. Lisa's car was still in the driveway when I left for work. But instead of driving straight to the station, I parked a few blocks away and pulled up my laptop. I logged in to find my iPhone. Lisa was an Apple addict, always upgrading to the latest model. And, lucky for me, she never changed her passwords. I clicked on her name. The map loaded, zooming in on a single point. Lake Allatoona. The same place from yesterday. She wasn't at work. She was with him. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could go there right now, catch her in the act. But I didn't. Instead, I opened my glove compartment, pulling out a prepaid cell phone I had picked up earlier that morning. I forwarded calls from my real number to this burner, then left my regular phone charging at home. If Lisa checked Life 360 again, she'd see me exactly where she expected me to be. I wasn't giving her any more advantages. With a deep breath, I started the truck and turned onto the highway. Today, I'd be working a different kind of case. The case of my own goddamn marriage. And when I was done, Lisa wouldn't even see me coming. The sun was already high when I pulled off the highway, taking the winding back roads that led to Lake Allatoona. The drive felt longer than it should have, my fingers clenching the steering wheel every time I replayed Lisa's smug indifference from that morning. "We live together. Isn't that enough?" "No, Lisa. It wasn't." I knew where she was, and I knew damn well she wasn't alone. The turnoff to Cooper's branch boat launch came up fast. I slowed down and pulled into the near-empty parking lot, scanning my surroundings. A young mother sat on a picnic bench, watching her little girl toss a ball in the grass. A few cars were scattered near the dock, but there were no boats in sight. Good. I parked near the tree line and reached into the back seat, pulling out my hardshell drone case. Inside, my Taro 690 hexacopter lay folded neatly, waiting. I ran my fingers over the carbon fiber frame, took a breath, and got to work. I set up a tripod with a directional antenna, checked the telemetry receiver, and powered up my laptop. The drone came to life with a quiet whir, its camera feed blinking onto my screen. I keyed in the GPS coordinates I had pulled from Lisa's phone. 2.8 miles across open water. I took one last look around. The mother and her daughter were still there, but they weren't paying attention to me. Good. I double-checked my calculations. The battery had enough juice for a round trip, barely. If I made any mistakes, the drone would end up at the bottom of the lake. I wasn't going to make mistakes. I tapped a button, and the hexacopter lifted into the air, steady and smooth. I put on my FPV, first-person view, goggles, and suddenly, I wasn't at the launch anymore. I was soaring, the lake stretching wide beneath me. The drone climbed to 400 feet, cutting across the treetops. The world shrank beneath me. I followed the pre-programmed route, watching as the water below shimmered in the midday sun. A minute passed, then two. Then I saw it. A white yacht anchored in a secluded cove. My stomach tightened. I adjusted the camera angle, zooming in. Lisa was there. She lay on a cushioned bench near the bow, her tanned legs draped over Paul Sutton's lap. He was shirtless, his sunglasses pushed up into his graying hair, a drink in his hand. Another man, one I didn't recognize, stood near the edge of the boat, holding a beer and laughing. A second boat was tied to the yacht's side, bobbing gently in the water. On that one, Jessica stretched out in a bikini, talking to someone just out of view. Lisa tilted her head back, smiling up at Paul as he ran his hand along her thigh. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. The camera caught everything in crystal clear 4K resolution. Lisa leaned in. Paul whispered something into her ear. She laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in years, and ran her fingers down his chest. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then, she kissed him. I gripped the transmitter so tightly my knuckles turned white. It wasn't a hesitant kiss. It wasn't uncertain. It was the kind of kiss a woman gives a man she craves. The kind she hadn't given me in a long time. Something inside me cracked. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I was done. I pulled back the camera view, double-checking my footage. Every frame was clear. Every touch. Every glance. Undeniable. Suddenly, Lisa froze. She pulled away from Paul and squinted up at the sky. My stomach dropped. She had seen the drone. She said something to Paul, sitting up, shading her eyes with her hand. Shit. I flipped the return switch on my controller. The drone banked sharply to the left and shot toward home. Paul stood up, shielding his eyes as he looked toward the sky. Jessica was talking animatedly, pointing. Lisa reached for her phone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I already knew who it was. I pulled it out, took a deep breath, and answered as calmly as I could. Hello. Lisa's voice came through, forced and casual. Hey, babe. What are you up to? My blood ran ice cold. She knew. She suspected. I forced a yawn. Not much. Just finished mowing the backyard. Probably gonna grab a burger later. Silence. Then, oh, that's nice. She was fishing for information, trying to gauge if I knew. I could hear the slight tremor in her voice. Good. You still at Jessica's dad's? I asked smoothly, leaning against the truck as the drone came into view. Another pause. Yeah, just laying by the pool. Liar. I watched the live feed as my hexacopter landed softly on the grass beside me. I had everything I needed. Lisa's voice cut through the line again, this time quieter. Jason, we should talk. When I get back. I stared at the drone, at the screen still showing her cheating, lying face. I let out a small chuckle, one that I knew would confuse her. Yeah, Lisa, I said, voice calm. We definitely should. And then I hung up. Lisa had no idea what was coming next. I sat in my truck for a long time after hanging up. The phone still rested in my hand. Lisa's last words echoing in my head. Jason, we should talk. I could almost picture her face, the forced casual tone she used when she was trying to play things cool. But there had been something else underneath, uncertainty. She wasn't sure what I knew. Good. I placed my phone down on the passenger seat and exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay in control. My heart was still pounding, but it wasn't from heartbreak anymore. It was from clarity. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I saw everything exactly as it was. Lisa had already left this marriage long before she kissed Paul Sutton on that yacht. She had just been too much of a coward to end it. That part, at least, I could take care of for her. I reached for my laptop, opened the drone footage, and transferred the entire file to a secure external drive. I wasn't going to lose a single second of this proof. Then, I grabbed my phone and sent a text to my lawyer. Ted, I have the evidence. We need to move forward. Call me first thing. The second I hit send, a weight lifted from my chest. I wasn't playing the fool anymore. I wasn't waiting for answers. Lisa was about to find out just how much damage she had done. When I got home, the house felt different. It was still the same place I had spent the last 20 years. Framed wedding photos on the wall, her shoes by the door, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. But now, it all felt like a crime scene. A place where lies had lived. I went straight to the kitchen, pulled a beer from the fridge, and leaned against the counter. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound in the house. I glanced at my phone. No new messages. Lisa was stalling. I knew her well enough to know she was scrambling, trying to come up with an explanation, a cover story, a way to turn this back on me. I took a long sip of my beer and let out a slow, bitter laugh. Not this time, Lisa. A familiar rumble of an engine outside made my muscles tense. Headlights flashed through the living room window. She was home. I placed my beer down and took a deep breath, mentally preparing myself. My pulse was steady. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I wasn't going to let her manipulate the conversation. This was the end. The front door opened, and Lisa stepped inside. She was still in her work clothes, a fitted blouse, pencil skirt, heels. Her hair was pulled back, not a strand out of place. To anyone else, she looked like the perfect wife, the devoted professional. But I knew better. Hey, she said, shutting the door behind her. Her tone was careful. Hey, I echoed, my voice unreadable. She hesitated, eyes scanning me for any sign of what I knew. I didn't give her anything. She walked toward the kitchen, tossing her purse onto the counter. I watched as she reached for a glass and poured herself some wine. You seemed off earlier, she said, her back still to me. Everything okay? I nearly laughed at the audacity. Everything okay? She had spent the afternoon in another man's arms, and she had the nerve to ask if I was okay? I stepped forward, resting my hands on the counter. Yeah, just thinking. Lisa turned, sipping her wine. About what? Us. She froze for just a second. It was quick, but I caught it. Us? She repeated, forcing a small smile. That sounds serious. It is. I met her eyes, holding her gaze. She took another sip, slower this time, as if she was buying herself a few more seconds to think. Jason, are you happy? The sheer ridiculousness of the question nearly made me laugh. No, Lisa, I'm not. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something, but for once, she didn't have the words. I let the silence stretch, let her feel the weight of it. Something's changed, she finally said. I can feel it, and I don't know why, but I get the feeling you're mad at me. Mad? I let out a small chuckle, shaking my head. Lisa, I'm past mad. She set her wine glass down carefully, her eyes narrowing. Jason, if there's something you want to say, just say it. I pushed away from the counter, walked over to the couch, and picked up my laptop. I turned it on, tapped the trackpad a few times, and flipped the screen toward her. Lisa's face drained of color. On the screen, there she was, lying on that yacht, her body tangled with Paul's, his hands all over her. The video played in perfect, damning clarity. Her breathing went shallow. I watched her throat bob as she swallowed hard. Jason, I can explain. Don't. My voice was quiet, but firm. She clamped her mouth shut. You don't get to explain, Lisa. You don't get to lie to my face anymore. I exhaled sharply, my hands steady. I know everything. She looked away, eyes darting to the floor, to the walls, anywhere but at me. For the first time in this marriage, Lisa had nothing to say. I closed the laptop. I'll make this simple, I continued. I'm done. I've already contacted my lawyer. We'll settle this quickly. Lisa finally looked at me then. Her eyes, those same eyes I had fallen in love with years ago, were filled with something I couldn't quite place. Regret? Or just fear of losing everything? You can't just. I can't. I cut her off. And I will. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I took my beer, down the last sip, and walked toward the stairs. We'll talk about the details later, I said over my shoulder. But for now, I have nothing left to say to you. I left her standing there, silent, the weight of her choices finally crashing down on her. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I barely slept that night. Lisa had retreated to the bedroom after our confrontation, slamming the door behind her. I half expected her to come storming back out, to throw out some pathetic excuse or demand a chance to explain. She didn't. That silence told me everything. She wasn't sorry. She was caught. I sat in the dim light of the living room, staring at my laptop, the drone footage frozen on the screen. Lisa's betrayal was captured in high definition, undeniable, unforgivable. I should have been angry. Maybe I was. But more than anything, I just felt done. At some point, I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, the first light of dawn was creeping through the blinds. I stood up, stretched, and grabbed my phone. No messages from Lisa. Fine. Let her pretend she could ignore what was coming. I tapped on my lawyer's contact and hit call. Ted picked up on the second ring. You sure know how to start my morning, Jason, he greeted, his voice thick with sleep. Tell me this is something simple. Not even close. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I got straight to the point. I have proof that Lisa's been cheating. I want the divorce papers drafted today. There was a slight pause on the line, then a sigh. Damn, Ted muttered. I had a feeling this was coming. All right, tell me everything. I told him. From the distant way Lisa had been acting, to the secret meetups, to the drone footage that sealed her fate. You recorded it yourself? Ted asked. Yeah, I confirmed. Good. You didn't violate any privacy laws. If it was out in the open, it's fair game. But listen, before we send anything, let's talk about the terms. I leaned against the counter, my free hand curling into a fist. I want a clean split. No alimony. No bullshit. Ted chuckled. She makes more than you, doesn't she? Twice as much. Then you're in a strong position. Georgia doesn't have fault-based divorce requirements, but evidence like this? It'll put pressure on her to settle fast. If she fights, we drag her through the mud. I don't care how we do it, I said coldly. I just want her out of my life. I hear you, Ted said. I'll have the papers ready by this afternoon. You want them served at home or at work? I didn't hesitate. Work. I wanted everyone at Sutton Realty to know exactly what she was. I spent the rest of the morning at the station, trying to focus on work, but my mind was elsewhere. I barely heard my coworkers when they spoke to me. The only thing that kept me from spiraling was the fact that, for the first time, I had a plan. At 1:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Ted. Papers are ready. Process server is on the way to her office now. I exhaled sharply, gripping my phone. This was it. Lisa's entire world was about to crash down. A part of me wondered how she would react. Would she cry? Beg? Would she be furious that I dared to expose her? I didn't care. She had already thrown away everything we had. Now, she was going to face the consequences. At 2:30 p.m., my phone rang. I answered without hesitation. It's done, Ted said simply. How did she take it? She didn't make a scene, but she looked shocked. Like she actually thought she could hide this from you forever. I smirked. Guess she's not as smart as she thinks. Clearly. Ted sighed. Now, she has a few choices. She can accept the terms, sign the papers, and make this quick. Or she can fight, though I doubt she will. Her whole career is built on image. A scandal like this, it could ruin her. I let that sink in. Lisa had spent years crafting a perfect life, high-end real estate deals, the right social circles, the polished image of a successful businesswoman. And now, she was about to lose it all. What's next? I asked. We wait for her response. She has 2 weeks to contest anything, but if she knows what's good for her, she won't. In the meantime, you might want to think about where you're going to live. I hadn't thought about that yet. The house was ours, technically, but I didn't want it anymore. It felt tainted. I'll figure it out, I muttered. Let me know if you need anything else, Ted said. Thanks, Ted. I hung up. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. That night, Lisa came home late. I was sitting in the living room, nursing a whiskey, when she finally walked through the door. She didn't look at me right away. She just dropped her purse on the table, exhaled, and ran a hand through her hair. Then, she finally spoke. So that's it, huh? I turned my glass in my hand, watching the amber liquid swirl. That's it. She let out a sharp breath, shaking her head. I can't believe you did this at work. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? I laughed, loud and bitter. You're embarrassed? Lisa, you should be grateful I didn't send that video to every single one of your clients. She flinched. I didn't want this, she said softly. Neither did I shot back. But you made your choice, Lisa. Now you live with it. She stared at me, something unreadable in her expression. Maybe regret, maybe realization. But it didn't matter. The damage was done, and soon, she would be nothing more than a memory. Lisa stood there, staring at me, her face pale but unreadable. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out her next move. Would she try to bargain? Beg? Pretend to be the victim? I didn't care anymore. I took a slow sip of whiskey, letting the silence stretch between us, letting her feel the weight of what she had done. Finally, she spoke. This doesn't have to be messy, Jason. I laughed, a low, bitter chuckle that I barely recognized as my own. Messy? I echoed. Lisa, you already made it messy. The second you climbed into bed with another man, you turned our marriage into a joke. She flinched. Good. She opened her mouth, then closed it, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I had seen this look before, when she got caught in a lie but hadn't figured out how to spin it yet. It wasn't serious, she finally muttered. It was just a distraction. I was feeling lost and... Don't. My voice was steel. Don't you dare stand there and try to justify it. You weren't lost, Lisa. You were bored. And instead of talking to me, instead of fixing what was broken, you decided to throw it all away. Her eyes flashed with something. Anger, maybe. You're not innocent in this either, she snapped. You checked out a long time ago. You spent more time tinkering with your stupid drones and working extra shifts than you did with me. Oh, there it was. The classic deflection. So what? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You think because I was working hard to give us a life, that gave you the right to cheat? She looked away. It wasn't like that, she muttered. No. I pushed. Then explain it to me. Explain how it happened. Tell me, Lisa, how did it start? Did he flirt with you first? Did you play innocent at first? Maybe just a few harmless drinks? And then what? The late nights? The business trips? When did you stop thinking about me at all? She had no answer. Because the truth was, there was no excuse. Finally, she sighed, rubbing her temples. I don't want to fight with you, she said, voice softer now. We've been together too long for that. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. Lisa, there's nothing left to fight about. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. Realization. She finally understood. This was over. I stood up, walking past her toward the stairs. I wasn't going to waste another second on this conversation. Jason. I paused at the bottom step, but didn't turn around. What? Where are you going? To pack. I could hear her breath hitch, but I didn't stay to watch whatever emotions flickered across her face. I didn't care anymore. I threw clothes into a duffel bag, my movements mechanical. Essentials first. A few shirts, jeans, boots. My police badge, my gun, my laptop with the drone footage that ended this marriage. Everything else. Lisa could keep it. I didn't want this house. This wasn't my home anymore. As I zipped the bag shut, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. Ted, she signed. It's official. Just like that. 20 years together, reduced to a few pieces of paper. A slow exhale left my chest. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was emptiness. This was what I wanted. What I needed. So why did it still feel like a punch to the gut? I ran a hand over my face, shaking off the weight pressing down on me. No, I wasn't going to let this break me. I grabbed my bag and slung it over my shoulder. When I stepped into the hallway, Lisa was standing there, arms crossed, watching me. Where will you go? She asked. Not your problem. She swallowed hard. Jason, I never wanted this. Then you shouldn't have cheated. That shut her up. I pushed past her, walked downstairs, and grabbed my truck keys. I didn't look back. I stepped out into the cool night air, inhaling deep. The sky was clear, stars stretching across the darkness. I should have felt small under them, but instead, I felt light. For the first time in years, I was free. I climbed into my truck and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, steady and strong. As I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't check the rearview mirror. I didn't need to. Lisa was already in my past, and I was finally looking forward. The road stretched ahead, dark and endless, the hum of my truck the only sound keeping me company. I didn't have a set destination, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back. Not to that house. Not to Lisa. Not to the life I had been desperately clinging to, even as it crumbled around me. I drove for an hour before I finally pulled off the main highway onto a quieter road. A familiar road. Hardin Bridge Road. I had been here before, a few times over the years. The land was mostly empty, except for an old barn and a scattering of trees that led down to the river. It was the kind of place where a man could be alone with his thoughts. Maybe that was exactly what I needed. I parked the truck near the clearing and stepped out. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and fresh water. The river, just a few yards away, glistened under the moonlight. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel tight. I stood there for a long moment, just breathing, letting the cool air clear my head. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A message from Ted. Lisa agreed to everything. Divorce will be finalized in 2 weeks. No alimony. 50-50th split on the house sale. It's over. Over. I stared at the words, letting them sink in. No more fighting. No more second-guessing. No more hoping that maybe, just maybe, she would come home one day and tell me it was all a mistake. Lisa was gone, and I was okay with that. I sat down on the hood of my truck, staring out at the river, my fingers tapping absent-mindedly against the metal. The weight of the past few months pressed down on me, but for the first time, it didn't feel unbearable. I was free. Now, I just had to figure out what came next. The answer came the next morning. I had spent the night in the back of my truck, wrapped in an old blanket, staring up at the stars until sleep finally took over. When I woke up, the sun was already creeping over the treetops, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I groaned, stretching my stiff muscles, then reached for my phone. A new message. From Stephanie. Hey, Boy Scout. You alive? A smirk tugged at my lips. I tapped out a reply. Barely. What's up? Her response came almost instantly. You still at the river? I frowned. How do you know I'm at the river? Because I'm 5 minutes away. Coffee or beer? I chuckled, shaking my head. Coffee. Definitely coffee. Stephanie's white SUV rumbled down the dirt path a few minutes later. She parked beside my truck, stepped out, and held up 2 cups from a local cafe. Black, 2 sugars, she said, handing me one. Figured you'd need it. I took it with a nod. You're not wrong. She leaned against the hood of her car, sipping her own coffee. So, she said after a moment. How's it feel? How's what feel? Being officially done with Lisa. I exhaled slowly, staring down at my cup. Honestly, I said, it feels good. Better than I expected. Stephanie studied me for a moment, then smirked. No regrets. None. She nodded. Good. Because I wasn't going to let you sit here and mope over a woman who didn't deserve you. I laughed. Is that right? Damn right. She took another sip of coffee, then glanced at the river. You know, this place suits you. You thinking of staying? I shrugged. I don't know yet. But it's peaceful. I like that. You should buy it, she said casually. Get yourself a fresh start. I considered that. A fresh start. I had spent so long trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. Maybe it was time to build something new instead. Maybe I will, I said. Stephanie grinned. Well, if you do, I'll be expecting an invite to the housewarming party. I smirked. I'll consider it. She pushed off the car and stretched. I gotta get to work. But don't disappear, okay? Wouldn't dream of it. She gave me one last look, something flickering in her eyes that I couldn't quite place. Then she climbed into her SUV, started the engine, and drove off. I stood there for a while after she left, sipping my coffee, watching the river flow. Maybe Stephanie was right. Maybe this was exactly where I needed to be. A fresh start. A new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. As I stood there by the river, watching the water flow effortlessly over the rocks, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak. But more than anything, I thought about what it all taught me. Life has a way of revealing the truth, no matter how hard we try to ignore it. I spent years convincing myself that Lisa and I were fine, that our love was unshakable. But the signs were always there. I just refused to see them. Lesson 1. Never ignore your instincts. If something feels off, don't push it aside. Trust your gut, because deep down, you already know the truth. Lesson 2. Respect yourself enough to walk away. Love should never make you feel small, unseen, or unworthy. If someone stops valuing you, don't waste your years waiting for them to change. Lesson 3. A broken heart isn't the end, it's a new beginning. It took me a long time to realize that losing Lisa wasn't a tragedy. Staying in a marriage built on lies would have been the real tragedy. As we get older, it's easy to settle into routines, to fear change. But sometimes, change is exactly what we need to truly live again. And standing there, with the river stretching endlessly before me, I finally felt alive.